The rain came down hard that November evening, the kind of cold rain that soaks through your jacket and chills you to the bone. Rita Morales pulled her thin coat tighter around her shoulders as she walked down Maple Street, her feet aching in her worn sneakers. She'd been on her feet for 10 hours straight, serving coffee and burgers at Danny's diner, and all she wanted was to get home, kick off her shoes, and hug her daughter. Rita was 32 years old, but lately she felt much older. Being a single mother in a small town wasn't easy. Every day was a balancing act between paying bills, keeping food on the table, and making sure her 8-year-old daughter Lily had everything she needed. Lily had asthma, and the inhaler she needed cost more than Rita wanted to think about. The insurance from the diner barely covered half of it. Tonight had been particularly rough. The dinner rush had been chaotic, with one table sending back their order twice and another customer leaving without paying. Her manager, Frank, had been in a foul mood all evening, snapping at everyone. Rita had dropped a tray of dishes during the chaos, and even though she'd cleaned it up quickly, Frank had glared at her like she'd committed some terrible crime. She could feel the weight of his disapproval even now, hours later. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Rita pulled it out with cold fingers and saw a text from Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school. "Lily's asking for you. Running a bit late tonight?" Rita typed back quickly. "Be there in 20 minutes. Sorry, Mrs. Chen. Thank you so much." She felt guilty. Mrs. Chen never asked for payment, insisting that she enjoyed the company, but Rita knew she was imposing. The older woman had her own life, her own routines. Rita made a mental note to bake some cookies this weekend as a thank you. Even though flour and sugar weren't exactly in the budget right now, the street was mostly empty. Most people had the good sense to be inside on a night like this. The streetlights cast yellow pools on the wet pavement, and Rita's shadow stretched long and thin as she walked. She passed the pharmacy where she'd picked up Lily's inhaler just 3 days ago, wincing at the memory of her credit card being declined the first time. She'd had to use her emergency cash, the money she'd been saving for new winter boots for Lily. The girl was growing so fast, and her current boots had holes in the soles. Rita was so lost in her thoughts, mentally calculating how many extra shifts she'd need to pick up, that she almost didn't see him. But something made her look up. Maybe it was a sound, or maybe just instinct. There, near the bus stop shelter, a figure was slumped against the bench. Her first thought was to keep walking. It was late, she was tired, and Lily was waiting. The smart thing would be to call someone, let the authorities handle it. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way the person was shivering, or the fact that the rain was coming down even harder now. Rita hesitated, then crossed the street toward the bus stop. As she got closer, she could see it was an elderly man. He was thin, maybe in his 70s, wearing a jacket that had seen better days and pants that were soaked through. His hair was white and plastered to his head from the rain. He wasn't sleeping, she realized. His eyes were open, but they had a distant, confused look. "Sir," Rita said softly, not wanting to startle him. "Are you okay?" The man looked up at her slowly, as if it took great effort to focus. His lips were slightly blue and he was shaking badly. I don't," he started to say, but the words seemed to escape him. He looked around, bewildered. "Where?" Rita crouched down, ignoring the rain soaking through her jeans. "It's okay. You're at the bus stop on Maple Street. Do you know your name? Do you live around here?" The man stared at her, and she could see genuine fear in his eyes. I can't remember. I should know. Why can't I remember?" His voice cracked with panic. Rita's heart squeezed. She'd seen confusion before in elderly customers at the diner, but this seemed different, more severe. The man was clearly in distress, and he was freezing. She looked around, hoping to see someone else, anyone who might help, but the street remained empty. She pulled out her phone and checked the time. Mrs. Chen would be worried. Lily would be worried. But she couldn't just leave this man here. She couldn't. "Okay, listen," Rita said gently. "I'm going to help you. My name is Rita. What's yours?" The man shook his head slowly. Robert. Is it Robert? I think. My daughter." He trailed off, his expression becoming more confused. "That's good. Robert." "Okay, Robert. We need to get you warm and get you some help." Rita stood up and looked around. The convenience store down the block was still open, its fluorescent lights bright against the dark street. She made a decision. "Robert, can you stand up? Can you walk with me a little bit?" With her help, the old man struggled to his feet. He was unsteady, leaning heavily on her arm. They made their way slowly to the convenience store, and Rita felt the stares as soon as they entered. The teenage clerk behind the counter looked up from his phone, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of them. Rita guided Robert to a spot near the coffee station, where there was a small seating area. "Sit here, okay? I'll be right back." She went to the hot food section and grabbed a container of soup, some crackers, a bottle of water, and a package of hand warmers. At the counter, she added a cheap emergency blanket from the rack. The total came to $23. Rita opened her wallet and stared at the single $20 bill inside. It was all she had until payday, which wasn't until Friday, 3 days away. She thought about the gas tank in her car that was running on fumes. She thought about the groceries she needed to buy. She thought about Lily. Then she looked back at Robert, who was sitting with his head in his hands, still shaking. Rita handed the 20 to the clerk. "Do you have $3 in change you could spare?" she asked quietly. The clerk, maybe 16 years old, looked at Robert, then back at Rita. Without a word, he rang up the items and gave her the change. "That guy okay?" he asked. "I'm getting him help," Rita said. She carried everything back to Robert and opened the soup, placing it in his trembling hands. "Here, drink this slowly. It'll warm you up." Robert took the container and his hands shook so badly that Rita had to help guide it to his lips. He sipped carefully, and she could see some color starting to return to his face. She opened the hand warmers and placed them in his palms, then draped the emergency blanket around his shoulders. "Thank you," Robert whispered. "You're very kind. My daughter, she's kind too, I think. I should call her. Do I have a phone?" He patted his pockets weakly but found nothing. Rita pulled out her own phone and dialed 911. "I need an ambulance," she told the dispatcher, giving the address of the convenience store. "There's an elderly man here who seems confused and disoriented. He's been out in the rain and he's very cold. I think he might be hypothermic." The dispatcher asked her several questions and Rita answered as best she could. Yes, he was conscious. No, he didn't seem to know where he lived or how to contact family. Yes, she would stay with him until the ambulance arrived. While they waited, Rita sat next to Robert, making sure he kept sipping the soup. She tried to make conversation, asking gentle questions, but his answers were fragmented and unclear. He mentioned a daughter named Catherine, a house with a garden, something about a foundation, but nothing concrete enough to help identify him or locate his family. Through the store window, Rita saw someone outside taking a picture with their phone. A woman in a jogging outfit, her phone pointed directly at them. Rita felt a flash of irritation but pushed it aside. People and their phones. Everything had to be documented, shared, posted. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, its red lights flashing through the store windows. 2 paramedics came in with a stretcher and medical bags. Rita explained the situation to them while they checked Robert's vital signs. "His body temperature is low," one of the paramedics said to the other. "Possible hypothermia. We need to get him to County General. Does he have ID?" the other paramedic asked Rita. "No, nothing. He seems confused, can't remember much." The paramedics nodded, clearly familiar with such situations. As they prepared Robert for transport, the elderly man reached out and grabbed Rita's hand. "Thank you," he said, his eyes clearer for just a moment. "You're an angel." "God bless you." Rita squeezed his hand gently. "You're going to be okay. They'll take good care of you." She watched as they loaded Robert into the ambulance. The paramedics told her they'd work on identifying him at the hospital and contacting his family. She nodded, gave them what little information she had, and stood in the rain as the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing. Only then did Rita remember Mrs. Chen and Lily. She looked at her phone and her stomach dropped. She was already 30 minutes late. She broke into a run, her tired legs protesting, her wet clothes heavy and uncomfortable. By the time she reached Mrs. Chen's apartment, she was out of breath. She knocked on the door and it opened immediately. Mrs. Chen stood there, Lily beside her in her pajamas, backpack at her feet. "Mama." Lily ran to her and Rita scooped her up despite her exhaustion. "I'm so sorry," Rita said to Mrs. Chen. "There was an emergency. An elderly man needed help and oh," Mrs. Chen waved her hand. "It's okay, Rita. Lily told me you're always helping people." "That's good. That's how we should be." She smiled warmly. "You're soaking wet. Get this girl home and into bed." Rita thanked her profusely, and she and Lily headed to their own apartment 3 floors up. As they climbed the stairs, Lily chattered about her day at school, about the math test she thought she did well on, about her friend Jessica's new puppy. "Mama, you smell like soup," Lily said as Rita unlocked their apartment door. "Long story, sweetie. Let me change and then I'll tuck you in, okay?" After Lily was in bed, Rita stood in the shower, letting the hot water wash away the cold and the exhaustion. She thought about Robert, wondering if he was okay, if they'd found his family. She thought about the $20 she'd spent, money she really couldn't spare. She thought about the look in his eyes when he'd called her an angel. She hadn't done anything special, she told herself. She'd just done what anyone would do. What anyone should do. As she dried off and got into her own pajamas, Rita had no way of knowing that the photo the jogger had taken was already making its way around social media. She had no way of knowing that by morning, her simple act of kindness would become the talk of the town. And she certainly had no way of knowing that helping Robert would change her life in ways she never could have imagined, starting with consequences she never saw coming. For now, she just climbed into bed, set her alarm for 5:30 in the morning, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow was another day, another shift, another chance to make enough money to keep her and Lily afloat. That was all she could think about. That was all she needed to think about, or so she believed. Rita's alarm went off at 5:30 the next morning, just like it did every weekday. She dragged herself out of bed, her body still tired from the night before. Her wet clothes from yesterday were draped over the bathroom radiator, still damp. She'd have to wear her backup uniform today, the one with the small stain on the collar that she could never quite get out. Lily was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Rita kissed her forehead gently, then went to make coffee with the last of the grounds in the container. She'd need to add coffee to the growing list of things to buy when she got paid. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from her coworker, Denise. "Girl, have you seen Facebook this morning?" Rita frowned. She barely had time for social media. Between work and taking care of Lily, scrolling through posts felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. She typed back, "No, why? Working today." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Denise's response came through. "Yes, working. But check Facebook before you come in. Trust me." A strange feeling settled in Rita's stomach. She opened the Facebook app, something she hadn't done in weeks. Her notification count was at 97. 97. She usually had maybe 2 or 3, mostly birthday reminders. The first post she saw made her breath catch. It was a photo of her and Robert at the convenience store last night. The picture showed her sitting next to him, the emergency blanket around his shoulders, her hand helping guide the soup to his lips. The caption read, "Local waitress stops to help homeless man on Maple Street. Faith in humanity restored." The post had been shared 43 times. The comments were mostly positive. "This is beautiful. We need more people like this. God bless her." But as Rita scrolled, she saw another post. This one was from someone named Bradley Hoffman, and the tone was very different. "Saw this woman hanging around with some vagrant near Danny's diner last night. Is this really the kind of person we want serving our food? What about hygiene? What about safety? I have kids who eat at that diner." Rita's heart started pounding. The post had been shared too, and the comments were harsh. "That's disgusting. She should be fired. I'm never eating there again." She checked the time. 6:15. She needed to get Lily up and ready for school, then get to work by 7:30. She pushed the phone aside, trying to ignore the anxious feeling growing in her chest. The morning routine was mechanical. Get Lily up, make breakfast, pack lunch, walk her to the bus stop. Lily chattered happily about a book report she was working on, completely unaware of her mother's worry. Rita hugged her extra tight before the school bus arrived. "Mama, you're squishing me," Lily laughed. "Sorry, baby. Have a good day. Love you." "Love you too." Rita watched the bus pull away, then started the 15-minute walk to Danny's diner. Her car was nearly out of gas, and she needed to save what little fuel remained for emergencies. Walking was free. The diner was already busy when she arrived. The breakfast crowd was in full swing, and the smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. Rita tied on her apron and grabbed her order pad, but before she could get to her section, Frank called her name from his office. "Rita, in here, now." Frank's tone made her stomach drop. She walked to his small office at the back of the diner, past the kitchen where Miguel the cook gave her a sympathetic look. That was never a good sign. Frank was sitting behind his desk, his face red, a vein throbbing in his temple. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s who'd managed the diner for 20 years. Usually he was fair if a bit grumpy, but today he looked furious. "Sit down," he said. Rita sat. Frank turned his computer monitor toward her. On the screen was Bradley Hoffman's Facebook post. "You want to explain this?" "Frank, I can explain. Last night after work, I found an elderly man who was "I don't care what you found," Frank interrupted. "Do you know who Bradley Hoffman is? He's one of our regulars, comes in 3 times a week with his family, and now he's telling everyone he knows not to eat here because one of my waitresses was, and I quote, fraternizing with homeless people." I wasn't fraternizing. The man needed help. He was sick and confused and that's very noble, Rita. Really. But it's not your job to save the world. Frank leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "I've already had 2 phone calls this morning. 2. People saying they saw the post and they're concerned about the diner's reputation." Rita felt her face flush. "Frank, I helped someone who needed help. That's all. It had nothing to do with work. You were wearing your uniform. People recognized you as a Danny's Diner employee. That makes it about work." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Look, Rita, I like you. You're a good worker, but I've got a business to run. I can't have this kind of attention." "What are you saying?" Frank wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm saying you're suspended. 2 weeks. Without pay." The words hit Rita like a physical blow. "What? Frank, no. I can't afford her. I have rent due. My daughter needs her medication. Please, I'm sorry. My hands are tied. Hoffman said if I don't do something, he's going to leave bad reviews everywhere. Google, Yelp, Facebook. He's got influence in this town. I can't risk it." Rita stood up, her legs shaking. "So you're punishing me for helping someone? For doing the right thing?" "I'm protecting my business," Frank said, but he still wouldn't look at her. 2 weeks. After that, we'll see how things settle down. Maybe it'll blow over. And if it doesn't?" Frank didn't answer. Rita untied her apron with trembling fingers and laid it on Frank's desk. She walked out of his office, past the kitchen where Miguel called her name, past Denise who reached out to touch her arm, past the customers who were probably the same people commenting on those Facebook posts. She made it outside before the tears came. She stood in the parking lot, her breath coming in short gasps, trying not to completely break down. 2 weeks without pay. She did the math in her head. Rent was $800, due in 5 days. She had maybe $200 in her checking account. Lily's inhaler refill was needed in a week, another $120. Groceries, utilities. The school was asking for $20 for a field trip Lily was excited about. It was impossible. There was no way to make it work. Rita pulled out her phone and called the one person she could always count on. Her mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Mia, what's wrong? You never call during work." Rita told her everything. The words tumbled out between sobs. Her mother listened quietly, then sighed deeply. "Rita, I wish I could help. You know I do. But your father's medical bills..." Her mother's voice cracked. "We're barely making it ourselves. If I had anything to give you, I would." "I know, Mama, I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called." "Don't be sorry. You did a good thing helping that man. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about that." After they hung up, Rita sat in her car, staring at the fuel gauge that was firmly in the red zone. She couldn't even afford to drive anywhere to look for other work. She thought about Robert, wondering if he was okay, if they'd found his family. Part of her wished she'd just walked past. If she had, she'd be working right now, earning money, keeping her head above water. But she couldn't regret it. Even now, broke and desperate, she couldn't regret helping him. Rita drove home slowly, praying the car wouldn't run out of gas. Back at the apartment, she opened her laptop and started searching for anything that might help. Emergency assistance programs, food banks, community resources. The library had free internet, so she'd been able to keep her old laptop even though it was slow and the screen flickered. She applied for emergency rental assistance, but the website said processing could take 4 to 6 weeks. She didn't have 6 weeks. She had 5 days. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. The Facebook posts were spreading. Someone had started a local discussion thread titled, "The Waitress and the Homeless Man, Good Deed or Bad Judgment." The comments were split down the middle. Some people defended her. Others said she was being irresponsible, that she should focus on her own family instead of strangers. One comment made her particularly angry. Easy to be charitable with other people's concerns. What about the diner's reputation? What about public health? Bleeding hearts never think about consequences. Rita wanted to respond, to defend herself, but she knew it wouldn't help. You couldn't argue with people who'd already made up their minds. She spent the afternoon applying for jobs online. Grocery stores, retail shops, anything that was hiring. Most applications asked when she could start. She put immediately, and hoped no one would check why she was suddenly available. When Lily came home from school, Rita had to pretend everything was normal. She made dinner with what they had in the pantry, pasta with butter and the last of the Parmesan cheese. Lily talked about her day, about the field trip to the Science Museum next week. "Everyone's going, Mama," Jessica said. "They have a real dinosaur skeleton." "Can I go, please?" Rita looked at her daughter's hopeful face and felt her heart break a little more. "We'll see, sweetheart. I need to check something first." Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Rita sat at the kitchen table with all her bills spread out in front of her. She did the math over and over, trying to find a way to make it work. But no matter how she calculated it, the numbers didn't add up. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Rita Morales?" A woman's voice, professional. "Yes. This is Jennifer from the Lakeside Gazette. I'm writing a story about the incident with the homeless man last night. Would you be willing to comment?" Rita's first instinct was to hang up, but then she thought about those Facebook comments about people calling her irresponsible. "His name was Robert," Rita said quietly. "He wasn't just some homeless man. He was a person. He was confused and sick and freezing in the rain. What was I supposed to do? Just walk past? So you don't regret helping him?" "No, I don't, even though it cost me my job." "You lost your job?" Rita explained about the suspension, about Frank's concerns, about Bradley Hoffman's complaints. Jennifer listened, asked a few more questions, then thanked her and hung up. Rita hoped she hadn't made things worse. The next morning, the newspaper article came out online. The headline read, "Good deed or bad judgment. Local waitress suspended after helping elderly man." The article was fair, presenting both sides, but Rita knew it would just fuel more debate, and she was right. By afternoon, the town was buzzing. Some people started leaving donations on her doorstep anonymously. A bag of groceries appeared outside her apartment. $20 in an envelope with no note. It was kind, and Rita was grateful, but it also made her feel ashamed. She'd never wanted charity. She'd always worked hard, paid her own way. At the same time, she heard through Denise that some customers at the diner were boycotting until she was fired permanently. The town was divided, and she was stuck in the middle. Rita spent her days looking for work and counting pennies. She visited the food bank and signed up for assistance programs. She walked dogs for neighbors and cleaned Mrs. Chen's apartment in exchange for watching Lily. Every small job helped, but it wasn't enough. The eviction notice came 3 days later. Bright yellow paper slipped under her door. She had until the end of the month to pay rent or vacate the premises. That night, Rita lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Lily's soft breathing from the next room. She'd done the right thing. She knew she had. But why did doing the right thing have to hurt so much? She thought about Robert, wondering where he was, if he remembered her, if he knew what his rescue had cost. She wasn't angry at him. She couldn't be. But she was angry at a world where kindness was punished and judgment came so easily. Rita closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would bring more of the same. More bills. More worry, more wondering how she was going to keep her daughter fed and housed while half the town debated whether she was a hero or a fool. She still didn't regret helping Robert, but she wondered how much more she could take before everything fell apart completely. The days blurred together after that. Rita woke up each morning with a knot in her stomach, the weight of unpaid bills pressing down on her like a physical thing. She'd never been unemployed before, not since she was 16 and got her first job bagging groceries. Work had always been her anchor, her way of proving she could take care of herself and Lily. Now without it, she felt like she was drowning. She started each day the same way. Wake up, get Lily ready for school, then spend hours on her laptop applying for jobs, cashier positions, cleaning jobs, anything that would hire her quickly. But most places wanted references, and she couldn't exactly ask Frank. The few interviews she managed to get never went anywhere. Word traveled fast in a small town. and everyone seemed to know about the controversy. One morning, about a week into her suspension, Rita was walking back from the food bank when she ran into Patricia Cruz from down the hall. Patricia was a nurse who worked night shifts, and they'd always been friendly, chatting in the hallway or the laundry room. But today, Patricia looked at her with something like pity mixed with disapproval. "Rita, I heard what happened. With the homeless man?" "His name was Robert," Rita said quietly, shifting the bag of donated groceries in her arms. Patricia crossed her arms. "I'm sure he was very grateful. But Rita, you have a daughter to think about. What would have happened to Lily if that man had been dangerous? What if something had happened to you?" Rita felt her face flush. "He was an elderly man who needed help. You don't know that. He could have been anyone." Patricia shook her head. "I'm just saying maybe think about your own family first next time. That's all." She walked away before Rita could respond. Rita stood there in the hallway, her hands gripping the grocery bag so tightly her knuckles turned white. That's what hurt the most, she realized. Not the strangers on Facebook, but people she knew. People who looked at her act of kindness and saw recklessness instead. At home, Rita unpacked the donated food. Canned soup, pasta, rice, peanut butter. All staples, nothing fresh, but she was grateful for it. Her own pantry was nearly bare. She'd been rationing everything, making meals stretch as far as they could go. Lily hadn't complained, but Rita noticed her daughter had stopped asking for snacks between meals. The mail came around noon, and Rita's heart sank when she saw the envelope from the power company. Past due notice. She had 2 weeks before they shut off electricity. She added it to the growing pile of bills on the kitchen table, each one a little bomb waiting to explode. Her phone rang. It was an unknown local number. Rita answered, hoping it might be about one of her job applications. "Rita Morales?" A man's voice unfamiliar. "Yes? This is Tom Chen from County General Hospital. I'm a social worker here. I'm calling about the elderly gentleman you helped last week. Robert Walsh." Rita's breath caught. "Is he okay?" "He's recovering. We were able to treat him for hypothermia and pneumonia. If you hadn't intervened when you did, the outcome could have been very different." Tom paused. "I wanted to thank you personally. What you did likely saved his life." Rita felt tears prick her eyes. "Does he have family? Were you able to contact them?" "We did. His daughter came from the city as soon as we called. She's been with him ever since." Another pause. "Rita, she knows what you did."
"She knows you helped her father?"
"She's been asking about you." "I'm just glad he's safe," Rita said, her voice thick. "She'd like to speak with you if you're willing. Would that be okay?" Rita hesitated. Part of her wanted to just move forward, to put the whole incident behind her. But another part, the part that had spent a week wondering if Robert was all right, needed to know he was truly okay. "Yes," she said. "She can call me." After Tom hung up, Rita sat on her couch processing the information. Robert was alive. He was recovering. That's what mattered. That's what had to matter, even if it had cost her everything. That afternoon, Lily came home from school unusually quiet. She dropped her backpack by the door and went straight to her room. Rita followed, concerned. "Lily? Baby, what's wrong?" Lily was sitting on her bed, her face turned away. "Nothing." "Lily." Her daughter turned around, and Rita could see she'd been crying. "Jessica said her mom says you're the lady everyone's talking about. The one who got in trouble for helping a homeless person. She said her mom says you made bad choices." Rita felt her heart crack. She sat down next to Lily and pulled her close. "Listen to me. I helped an older man who was very sick. He needed help and I gave it to him. That's not a bad choice. That's never a bad choice." "But you lost your job," Lily said, her voice small. "I'm suspended. It's different. And yes, it's been hard. But Lily, I need you to understand something." Rita lifted her daughter's chin so they were looking at each other. "Doing the right thing isn't always easy. Sometimes it costs us something. But we still have to do it because that's what good people do. That's what I'm trying to teach you. Are we going to be okay, Mama?" Rita wanted to say yes. She wanted to promise that everything would work out. But she'd never lied to her daughter, and she wasn't going to start now. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure we are," she said instead. "We might have to make some changes. Things might be tight for a while. But we're going to be okay because we have each other. Understand?" Lily nodded, wiping her eyes. "I'm glad you helped that man, even if other people don't get it." Rita hugged her tight, blinking back her own tears. This was why she kept going. This girl right here. Later that evening, after Lily was in bed, Rita got another call. This time the number wasn't local. "Hello, is this Rita Morales?" A woman's voice, cultured and educated. "Yes. My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm Robert Walsh's daughter. Tom Chen from the hospital gave me your number. I hope that's all right." "Of course," Rita said, sitting up straighter. "I wanted to call and thank you personally for what you did for my father." Catherine's voice was thick with emotion. "Tom told me you stayed with him, bought him food and blankets with your own money, called for help, and waited until the ambulance came. You have no idea what that means to me. I'm just glad he's okay." "How is he doing?" "He's improving every day. The hypothermia was severe, and the pneumonia was serious, but the doctors say he'll make a full recovery, thanks to you." Catherine took a breath. "Tom also told me something else. He mentioned you might be going through some difficulties because of what happened." "Is that true?" Rita hesitated. She didn't want pity. She didn't want charity. But Catherine's voice was so genuine, so kind, that she found herself telling the truth. "I was suspended from my job. The diner where I work got some complaints, and my manager thought it was best if I took some time off." "Suspended? For helping my father?" Catherine sounded shocked. "That's outrageous." "It's complicated," Rita said, though saying it out loud made it sound even more absurd. "And you're a single mother," Tom said. "With a daughter?" "Yes, Lily, she's 8. Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Rita, I want to help. My father would want to help. Please let us do something. I appreciate that, really. But I'll be okay. I'm looking for other work, and I'll be back at the diner in another week. We'll manage. At least let me send you something. To cover what you spent helping him. The food, the blankets, the time you lost, please." Rita wanted to refuse. Pride was sometimes all she had left. But then she thought about the eviction notice, about Lily's medication, about the electricity bill. "The items I bought came to about $23, Rita said quietly. "If you want to reimburse that, I'd be grateful." $23, Catherine repeated, and her voice broke slightly. "My father's life was saved for $23. They talked a bit more. Catherine told Rita about her father, about how he'd been diagnosed with dementia 2 years ago, about how he'd wandered away from his assisted living facility during a moment of confusion. She told Rita that she'd been searching frantically, that the police had been involved, that she'd feared the worst. When the hospital called and said someone had helped him, that a kind woman had made sure he was safe, Catherine's voice caught. "I'm so sorry you've had to suffer for doing that." After they hung up, Rita felt a strange mix of emotions. It was good to know Robert was okay, to talk to his daughter, to understand the full story, but it also made the injustice of her situation feel more acute. She'd saved a man's life, and she was being punished for it. The next day, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a check for $250 and a note in elegant handwriting. "Rita, please accept this with my deepest gratitude. You gave me my father back. This is just a small token. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. With sincere thanks, Catherine Walsh." There was also a phone number. Rita stared at the check. $250. It would help, certainly. It would buy groceries, maybe keep the electricity on a bit longer, but it wouldn't solve the bigger problem. She still needed a job. She still needed steady income. She deposited the check that afternoon and used some of it to buy groceries, real groceries, not just staples from the food bank. Fresh fruit for Lily, a chicken to roast, vegetables. The cashier at the store, a woman Rita recognized from church, gave her a warm smile. "I heard what you did," the woman said quietly as she scanned the items. "For that man. My grandmother always said God sees everything. He sees you too." It was a small kindness, but it meant more than the woman probably knew. The days continued to pass. Rita cleaned houses for cash, walked dogs, did odd jobs for neighbors. Mrs. Chen let her clean her apartment in exchange for watching Lily, which saved money on childcare. Every dollar helped, but it wasn't enough. It was never quite enough. The Facebook posts had mostly died down, but the damage was done. The town remained divided. Some people crossed the street when they saw her coming. Others went out of their way to offer support. Rita learned to recognize who was who. One afternoon, Rita was at the public library using their computers to apply for more jobs when she overheard 2 women talking nearby. She recognized one as a regular at the diner. "I think the whole thing is ridiculous," the woman was saying. Frank should never have suspended her. She did a good thing. But what about the complaints? The other woman asked. Complaints from one person. Bradley Hoffman. You know what his problem is? He doesn't like that Rita turned down his son last year when he asked her out. This is just him being petty. Rita froze. She'd completely forgotten about that. Trevor Hoffman, Bradley's son, had asked her on a date about a year ago. Rita had politely declined, saying she wasn't interested in dating right then. Trevor had been fine about it, but apparently his father wasn't. Was that what this was really about? Was she being punished not for helping Robert, but because of some petty grudge? The thought made her furious and heartbroken at the same time. That night, Rita told Lily they couldn't afford the field trip to the Science Museum. Lily's face fell, but she nodded and said she understood. She didn't cry or complain. She just hugged her mother and went to her room. Rita sat at the kitchen table and finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs. She'd tried so hard. She'd worked so hard. And for what? To be broke and suspended and judged by people who didn't know her, who didn't care about the truth? She thought about giving up, about packing what they could carry and leaving town, starting over somewhere else. But where would they go? She had no money for a move. She had no job waiting elsewhere. She was trapped, and she had no idea how to get free. But then she thought about Robert recovering in the hospital. She thought about Catherine's gratitude. She thought about Lily saying she was glad her mother had helped him. Maybe that had to be enough. Maybe knowing she'd done the right thing had to sustain her through this, even when everything else was falling apart. Rita wiped her eyes and looked at the pile of bills. 1 more week until she could go back to work. 7 more days. She just had to make it 7 more days. She could do that. She had to do that for Lily, for herself, for the person she wanted to be, even when the world made it so hard to be good. Rita's phone rang on a Thursday afternoon, 2 days before she was supposed to return to work. She was folding laundry in her apartment, trying to ignore the final notice from the landlord that had arrived that morning. The number on her phone showed Catherine Walsh's name. Hello? Rita, it's Catherine. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Catherine's voice was warm, but there was something urgent in her tone. No, not at all. How's your father doing? Much better, actually. That's part of why I'm calling. He's being discharged from the hospital tomorrow and he's been asking about you constantly. He wants to meet you properly, to thank you himself. Catherine paused. I know this might be asking a lot, but would you be willing to visit him? Maybe this Saturday. I could come pick you up. Rita looked around her small apartment. She thought about her nearly empty bank account, about returning to work in 2 days with no guarantee that Frank wouldn't find another reason to let her go. She thought about Lily, who'd been so understanding through all of this. I'd like that, Rita said, but you don't need to pick me up. Just tell me where and when. The care facility is across town. It's quite a drive. Please let me send a car for you. You've done so much already. Rita wanted to argue, but she thought about the gas gauge in her car that had been sitting on empty for days. Okay, thank you. They arranged for Saturday at 10 in the morning. After hanging up, Rita felt a strange flutter of nervousness. She'd thought about Robert often over the past 2 weeks, wondering if he was okay, if he remembered that night. Now she'd actually see him again. Saturday morning arrived cool and bright. Rita dressed in her nicest clothes, a simple blue dress she usually saved for church and a cardigan that only had one small snag. She explained to Lily where she was going. Can I come? Lily asked. Not this time, sweetie. But Mrs. Chen said you could help her bake cookies today. Would you like that? Lily's face brightened. Can I bring you some? I'd love that. The car that arrived was nicer than Rita expected. A black sedan with leather seats and a professional driver who opened the door for her. Rita felt out of place, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The drive took about 40 minutes. Through parts of town Rita rarely saw, where the houses got bigger and the lawns more manicured. The care facility was nothing like Rita imagined. It looked more like a hotel than a nursing home, with a circular driveway, a fountain, and gardens that were still green despite the November chill. The lobby had marble floors and a chandelier. Rita's sneakers squeaked slightly as she walked across the polished floor. Catherine was waiting for her. She was in her late 40s with silver streaks in her dark hair and kind eyes. She wore elegant clothes but had a warm, genuine smile. When she saw Rita, she came forward immediately and took both of her hands. Rita. Thank you so much for coming. My father is so excited to see you. How is he? See for yourself. Catherine led her through hallways decorated with art and plants, past common areas where elderly residents played cards or watched television. They stopped at a door marked 3B. Catherine knocked gently and opened it. The room was spacious and filled with afternoon light. There was a sitting area with comfortable chairs, a large bed, and windows overlooking the gardens. And there, sitting in a chair by the window, was Robert. He looked completely different from the confused, shivering man she'd found at the bus stop. He was clean and well-dressed, wearing a cardigan and slacks. His white hair was neatly combed, but it was his eyes that struck Rita the most. They were clear and focused, with a sharpness that hadn't been there before. "You're here," Robert said, his face breaking into a wide smile. "My angel from the rain." Rita felt her throat tighten. "I'm glad to see you're doing better." Robert stood up slowly, using a cane for support, and Catherine moved to help him. "Better? I'm alive because of you. Come sit, please. Let me look at you properly." Rita sat in the chair across from him while Catherine settled on a small sofa nearby. Robert studied her face with such intensity that Rita felt self-conscious. "I remember," Robert said quietly. "Not everything, but I remember you. Your kindness, the way you didn't hesitate even though I was a stranger, even though I must have looked frightening. You didn't look frightening. You looked like someone who needed help." Robert's eyes grew misty. "Catherine told me what happened to you. What you lost because of helping me. Your job, the trouble in your town. It's unforgivable." "It's not your fault," Rita said quickly. "No, but it's unjust. And I can't stand injustice." Robert leaned forward. "Tell me about yourself, Rita. Tell me about your daughter. Catherine mentioned you're raising her alone." Something about Robert's gentle manner made Rita open up. She told him about Lily, about working at the diner, about trying to make ends meet and give her daughter a good life. She didn't mention the eviction notice or the empty bank account, but somehow she suspected they both knew. "What does your daughter want to be when she grows up?" Robert asked. Rita smiled. "Last week she wanted to be a veterinarian. The week before, an astronaut. She changes her mind constantly. But she's smart. Really smart. She just needs opportunities." "All children need opportunities," Robert said. "That's what I spent my life believing. That's what I built my foundation around before." He gestured vaguely at his head. "Before my mind started playing tricks on me." "Foundation?" Rita asked. Catherine spoke up. "My father didn't just run a business, Rita. He built one of the largest charitable foundations in the state. For 30 years, he helped families in crisis. Single parents, children in poverty, people who needed a hand up. It was his life's work." Rita looked at Robert with new understanding. "You helped people. I tried to. Until this disease took that away from me." Robert's expression grew sad. "Most days now I can't remember what I did yesterday. But that night, Rita, I remember you. Your face, your voice, the way you made me feel like I mattered even when I was at my lowest. You did matter. You do matter." Robert reached out and took her hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "I want to help you now. Catherine and I have been discussing it. We want to make this right." Rita's first instinct was to refuse. "I didn't help you for a reward." "I don't want to—" "This isn't a reward," Catherine interrupted gently. "This is justice. You were punished for doing the right thing. That's wrong, and we want to fix it. I go back to work on Monday. Things will get better." Catherine and Robert exchanged a look. "Rita," Catherine said carefully, "I did some research. I called the diner. I spoke with Frank." Rita's stomach dropped. "You what?" "I wanted to understand the situation fully. Frank told me that even though your suspension is ending, he's considering letting you go permanently. The complaints haven't stopped. Bradley Hoffman is still pressuring him." Rita felt like she'd been punched. "He didn't tell me that." "I don't think he planned to until Monday." "I'm sorry. I know this must be hard to hear." Rita stood up, needing to move, to process. She walked to the window and stared out at the manicured gardens. 2 weeks of struggle, of odd jobs and rationing food and telling Lily they'd be okay. And for what? To go back and be fired anyway? "What am I going to do?" she whispered, not really asking anyone. "Let us help," Robert said from behind her. "Please." Rita turned around. "Help how? You can't make Frank keep me on. You can't change people's minds about what happened." "No," Catherine said, standing up. "But we can offer you something better. Rita, my father's foundation still operates. I run it now in his name. We help families exactly like yours. But more than that, we need people like you. People who understand what it's like to struggle. People who genuinely care about others. I don't understand. Catherine walked over to her. We're opening a new community outreach program. It's designed to identify families in crisis and connect them with resources. We need someone to coordinate it. Someone who knows the community, who's been through hardship themselves, who has real compassion. We need someone like you. Rita stared at her. You're offering me a job? A position, yes. Full-time with benefits. Health insurance, which would cover your daughter's medications. A salary that would let you support your family without working multiple jobs. Reasonable hours so you can actually be there for Lily. It sounded too good to be true. Rita had learned that when something sounded too good to be true, it usually was. Why? She asked. Why me? Robert spoke from his chair. Because you stopped when others walked by. Because you sacrificed your last $20 for a stranger. Because you did the right thing even when it cost you everything. That's who we need. That's who can help others best. I don't have experience with that kind of work. I'm a waitress. You have life experience, Catherine said. You understand what people are going through because you've lived it. And we'll train you in everything else. Rita, you'd be perfect for this. Rita's mind was spinning. A real job. With benefits. Enough money to pay rent. To keep the electricity on. To buy Lily those new boots she needed. I need to think about it, she said. Though every part of her wanted to say yes right then and there. Of course. Take all the time you need. Catherine pulled out a business card and a folder. Here's all the information. The salary, the benefits package, everything. Look it over. Talk to Lily. And when you're ready, call me. Rita took the folder with shaking hands. She looked at Robert, who was watching her with such hope and kindness that she felt tears threatening again. Thank you, she managed to say. For this. For understanding. For caring. Thank you, Robert said softly. For saving my life. And now let us help save yours. The drive home felt surreal. Rita clutched the folder in her lap, almost afraid to open it, afraid that if she looked too closely, the offer would disappear like a dream. When she got home, Mrs. Chen was waiting with Lily, who ran to hug her. Mama, we made chocolate chip cookies. They're so good. Rita held her daughter tight, breathing in the smell of cookies and little girl shampoo. I bet they're amazing, baby. After Mrs. Chen left and Lily was busy with her coloring books, Rita opened the folder Catherine had given her. Inside was a detailed job description, an offer letter, and information about the foundation. The salary listed made her gasp. It was more than double what she made at the diner. The health insurance was comprehensive. There was even a retirement plan. At the bottom of the offer letter was a handwritten note from Catherine. Rita, you gave my father back to me. This is just the beginning of how we want to thank you. But more than that, you're genuinely the right person for this role. I meant every word I said. Think about it, and I hope you'll say yes. With gratitude and respect, Catherine. Rita read the letter 3 times. She looked at the salary number again and again. She thought about what this could mean. No more choosing between groceries and medicine. No more eviction notices. No more lying awake at night wondering how she'd make it through another month. But more than that, she thought about doing work that mattered. Helping other people the way she'd helped Robert. Being there for families who were struggling just like she had been. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Rita sat at her kitchen table with the folder open in front of her. She thought about Frank and the diner and Bradley Hoffman's petty grudge. She thought about the people who'd judging,